Okay, so now that we have our form set up, now we're going to write code and use built-in functionality from the browser that will listen for events on the form. And we generally call this handling the form submission, okay? And I talked about last time how by default the form will expect a server-side backend script, which we're not going to write. So we're going to change some of that behavior. You'll see that today. And in writing this, we have to do something we haven't done before, which is add an event listener. So I've given you a link here to the MDM docs for this. And this is another good one to read through, right? Just to look through it. So we have an add event listener is the actual JavaScript that we use, right? And what we're doing is basically telling our JavaScript, listen for an event. Now there's many different kinds of events, and here's your general syntax, okay? The many different types, and you can come down here and look at the many different types of, they list them here. Animation, clipboards, I mean, there's just so many different types of events that you can on the form itself. We could, but I guess what I would say is this is not just limited to forms, but it is very common in forms. Okay, so let's write this in order to help you understand this kind of really fundamental concept. I keep saying that, but it's all true. Okay, so back over in VS Code, here's where we left it, right? We had our form. We set up the form set. I took off in here the action and that represented the back end. So there's some code we're going to write. So for now, I'm kind of done with this. So I think what I like to do is just for now is take off the HTML because I'm not going to need it right now. The thing I'm going to do though, and if you remember back when we were talking about how to set up constants in the global space, I'm actually going to use now a capital, all caps. And the reason we do this, if you remember back to what we were reading on chat, was that it makes more sense when you have variables that are not going to be really updated. And in this case, we're going to have a variable for the form that points to the HTML form that we wrote last time. So here what you want to do is document dot. Now this is where get element by ID we've also seen query selector. The research I showed is that it is actually more efficient to write get element by ID from a JavaScript perspective. But there are definitely times you need to have a little more flexibility in this, but for this code it should be fine. Now if you don't remember where I got this from, you can go back to, I shouldn't have closed the HTML now, but just to show you, is we gave it an ID. So if you have any HTML experience, and even if you don't, it's okay, is that there's generally an ID for that specific string value only once in the page. And there are other times when we have things that have classes, that have multiples, there are just other situations, but in this case there should only be one. Okay, if there are multiples, then what it returns is different. But let's go back here, okay? So now what I've done is I now have set up a constant in my global space. I've pointed it to the form itself. And so I'm going to come down here now, right, where I've displayed, and just for a moment, I'm going to go ahead and look at my server just to show you what this gives us. Okay, where is my server running? Oh, maybe I don't have it running yet. Oh, I did have it running somewhere. Oh, well, run it again. 6, here we go. I did have it somewhere else. Okay, main.js. Okay, so because I now have this, okay, this form, I can come down here and actually just type in the console form. And notice what happens as soon as I do that, as we've kind of seen before various times, when we are at the console, we're referencing the code that is our JavaScript code, and that JavaScript code is pointing to that form and everything in that form, okay? So if we were just to hit, right, form here, it would give us that whole, right, all of it. Now you have to click through it if you want to see all of the items in here. Okay. And you can also, which by the way, we're not going to do this, but I just want you to know, right? What happens here is it returns, what it returns is an array. We call it an array-like list. But if I hit 0, that returns, because each of these is in an array entry. So how would I grab legend, right? So what would I do? Because legend is after, right? So play around with this just to have a feel for what this, and we've used this before, but the more you start to understand what that represents, the better. Okay? So play around. Play around with that a little bit. All right, so now how do we, or what are we going to listen for? Well, we want to listen for whenever the user clicks the submit or hits the submit, okay? So in this case, we already know we have some built-in validation. Hopefully you got that from last time, right? So in other words, when this is clicked, there's some stuff that happens behind the scenes that you never had to write, which is great from a JavaScript encoding perspective. But now we actually want to handle, right? That's what I started with. We want to handle the input. So now back over here, there's something called Add Event Listener. That's the link that I gave you to the articles on MDN. So in this case, right, we're going to listen for something. Well, what are we going to listen for? We're going to listen for a submit. Now, I'm going to put a comma here. I'm going to put function. This is just a regular function. Now, this pattern, okay, is new to you if you don't have any experience with JavaScript. And here's how you would read something like this. When you write this line of code, this is going to listen for, it's going to set on and listen, and JavaScript is listening for, and basically is capturing anytime you click the page, right? It captures something, but it's listening for a specific type of action. So a submit, there's click, there's just, there's so many different things you can have JavaScript listen for. And when it does listen for that, then it runs this. And this introduces us first time in this course to asynchronous. Okay, so you do something and then something else happens, because JavaScript by its nature is synchronous. Okay, so, and we'll cover asynchronous more later, but this is the first time you see it. And many people don't even realize when they write Add Event Listeners that it is asynchronous. But basically, here's all you got to know. Once this happens, then we run this. And this is also called a callback. Okay? A callback function. So do this when when this happens, then do this. Right? When we're calling functions before this, they're just happening as soon as we call them. But in this case, we're waiting for something. And there's a lot that happens under the covers that you start to learn later. For now, we're just going to say, understand that this is a callback. It's the first time we've seen asynchronous code. Okay, so this is just a regular function. This signature is no different than what we've had before, right? It just says this comma indicates that when this happens, then do this. So we're going to write some code in here, but for now, we're just going to do a console.log. And it's going to say, I am inside the callback function. Oop, helps when there we go. Okay. So at this point, right, what should happen? Let's go look at it. Okay, so we're going to come over here. Oh, evidently I already had a breakpoint in there, so I'm just going to let that run. Good. Now, nothing happened on the console. Let's go make sure our code's there. It is, but nothing happened here. Okay, why? Why did nothing happen here? Well, because we haven't actually done this in order for this part, the function, to run. Now, where this can get a little confusing because of our require is when we hit this, then the require kicks in. But let's just say we put anything in there and then we hit submit, right? Now, what happened is it actually did run. Okay? But look up here. Remember I was telling you, you see this, right? Because of the default behavior of a form. And I saw it real quick, so let's see if we can set, I had a little bit of a problem with this yesterday. Good. So what I did is I did R and R again, doesn't matter at this point. I hit submit, but I had a breakpoint inside the event listener. So now if I hit step, I see it, boom, which is awesome. But the question is, why when I do step again does it go away? And that's because of this default behavior, okay? So what we need to do is inside of our callback first tell it, hey, listen, we want to stop that default behavior. So I'm going to write something here and we'll talk about it. There's different ways. E.prevent, okay, default, okay. So E is for the event itself, and I'll show you that in a minute. Now remember, this function is being called after the submit, when the submit happens. So what we're getting is a lot of what we call event data. So what we're going to do is pass that event data, N as an E. And whatever we call this, we have some flexibility here, but this is kind of the naming standard. We either call it E or we call it an event. The first thing that happens is it's going to stop that default behavior. So let's do a couple things now. Now that we have that, right, we're just going to actually just do a new line. And now, then I could do this at the console. I'm actually going to look at that event. Okay, so let's let it run again. Get rid of this, go back to our main, refresh our page. And again, why, and this is what you get used to. It's asynchronous. It's waiting for something. The thing it's waiting for is you, okay? It's waiting for you as the user to actually do something to allow this callback function to be fired. It's waiting for a submit, right? So clicking on submit is the type that it's looking for. So again, R, submit, okay? Now look what happened here is it did output, right? So here is all the data that the browser stored in the E, right, the event, that we can use if we want, which is totally awesome. We can totally use some of this stuff. Now there's some of it you won't use at a beginning level, but later, the more you do JavaScript programming, you would. And you can kind of look at it and see what it's doing, right? Again, the thing we could do is set a breakpoint so that you see that. Okay, now, now what do we need to do? So let me ask you this. This is the first thing I'm going to have you do. In your notes, right, I want you to explain. Now you need to do this, explain in your own understanding what is happening in the event listener. Okay, so do your best there, right? Do your best to explain it in your own words. If you need to go back and watch, do it again, because this code, understanding this, what's happening, and then the pieces of it is important. And again, I've written it here because there's other ways you can write this code, but this just kind of clearly shows you what's happening inside that event listener. Okay, so now let's think about, do that, pause and then come back. Now we're going to think about, what do I want to do? Well, I want to capture the user input, right? So we want to capture whatever is in here and whatever's in here, right? So how do I do that in code? Well, I can actually kind of do it in here before I do it in code. So if I typed, right, here, even before I hit submit, I can already grab this value in here. And I can do it, oh, I missed a step. Oh yeah, I missed a step. That's okay. Is it okay? Yeah, actually, sometimes it is okay to leave in mistakes. I just realized it. And the reason this is working with my mistake in there is because there's only one submit on this page. And what I mean by this is I had set up this form here, but I forgot to, at the beginning of the event listener, is to tell it which one. And again, the reason it's working is if I had two forms, it wouldn't know which one to listen for. And that's why I would preface this by saying form.add event listener. That's good. That's one of those, like, it's not a happy accident, but it's okay too to understand that distinction, that why we want to specify what you're listening specifically on. We're listening on that form. Okay? So the reason I bring that up, let me just go ahead and refresh my page, is if I come down here, okay, now how would I reach into that field, that input, and grab out, right, whatever data is in there, okay? Would you remember when on the index file I said when we name it this way, right, we actually are giving it a name that we can reference in JavaScript, which is nice. So now we could do .first name, okay? Now what that does is it actually, if we hit return here, it would grab that whole tag, okay, which says, right, again, this is returning the tag itself. Now there's also IDs we could add here, but for our purposes we don't need to do that. So if we wanted, this tells me the HTML. What if I want the whatever is inputted there? Then I would add, and I'm using up arrow there, .value. So that allows me to grab the value of whatever is inputted into that field, right? Okay, so get that. So that's the way we then reach in to grab the values once the user has entered something. Now, when we talk about validation, of course, this wouldn't be valid code, and we'd want to code for that in validation we would write, and we'll do that. I don't know if we'll do it this week, but we'll start doing that soon. Okay, I'm going to, for a moment, get rid of this. I'm going to refresh this just to make sure I have it. Okay, so now inside the HTML, the JavaScript, right? I'm going to, for a moment, just get rid of these or comment them out. I'm going to set a const. I'm going to say first name is going to be equal to what? Form dot. And in this case, now we reference, like I showed you, first name. Okay. Now, okay, let me just do that. Now, am I missing something? Yeah, .value. Okay, so const last name equal form dot first, last name dot value. Okay, cool. Okay, now I'm not console logging these because remember I don't really have to, because I can always just view them by setting breakpoints. And sometimes that's what I start doing, and instead of doing these console logs, I just set a breakpoint. I hit submit. This line is going to execute. I can roll back to see, yeah, grab that there. And now we have those two values that we can use in the rest of our code. Okay? Okay, so this is your basic setup for handling the event listener. We have to have the default, right? We're listening for the event, right? Remember, when this is called, once this is clicked, and when this add event listener has an event that it said, oh yeah, I have an event, you've asked me to, it sends all of that event data into the function, the callback function, right? That again is it should be relatively new to you, because most code runs just sequentially, boom, boom, one line after the other. But in this case, this code doesn't run until something happens, and that's why we call it a callback or asynchronous code. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to go ahead here's your, because I'm setting up for your coding challenge. So go ahead now and commit this, okay? But here's your coding challenge. So commit what we've done already, right? And here's what I want you to think about. What would we have to add in the HTML to now grab the two values that we need, right? So I'm going to have you take a stab at this. Let me go back to here. So what two values do we need? We need the household members and the house size. So just think about this. How would you take a stab, right, at modifying the HTML? And if you want, take a stab at the JavaScript as well. So let's first tackle the HTML. What would you add here to get those values to have from the user, right? Do that, and then I'll have a commit for your HTML. I'll give it a name. You'll see it in here. So give that a chance, give that a try, and then you can come back and we'll code along and add those things in there.